So I've been debating as to whether or not I should do a full review of the first TNA Thursday Night Impact on AMC, which happened on January 15, 2026 at the Curtis Culwell Center in Garland, Texas. Monumental event for TNA, a very big moment in its history. The first time that it pops on a major cable network since, I guess, Spike TV, which would mean like practically a decade at this point. If I could be getting the timeline mixed up a little bit. I might not be very specific on the dates, but nonetheless, it's a huge event for them. Finally getting some type of deal with AMC, and as I had mentioned much previous to this, whenever the situation did unfold, and people were talking about the deal in about itself, I was firmly in the position that it's good for TNA because whatever they're getting now with AMC is better than what they were getting with Access, which was zero, because Anthem owns both Access and TNA, and TNA was basically making content for free for the network. That was essentially what it was. So whatever money they were making here, whatever deal they got is unquestionably better. Now, I went off on a bit of a tangent here because the premise of what I was starting to say that at least that I wanted to start off this video with was the struggle as to whether or not I should do a review of the show, because I did a watch party on stream last Thursday evening, and that was something. And if you were there, or if you've watched the video on demand since, I didn't think much about this. I thought it was a terrible show, like an absolutely terrible show, and one of the worst things I had seen. There were whatever bright lights had happened were just completely smothered by just the overall nonsense that happened on the show. So I thought, and I wondered, do I want to revisit this? Because, I had such a terrible time watching this show. Do I really want to revisit this? Is the live stream enough? As it is usually the case, I whenever I start to take some distance from a wrestling show, whenever I sleep on it and I come back the next day, then I have a whole bunch of new thoughts. I have new ideas popping into my head. There's things then that I'm like, I have to clarify this. I have to talk it out. I have to see what this is all about. Which is how I like to review things in general. I'm not great at the instant reaction, post-show type of deal. I like to create some distance. I like to create some distance between the show and myself. And look, this is exactly what happened with TNA's debut on AMC. I wake up the next day on the Friday, and I've got, there's so many things going on. I feel I have to go over it. I have to review it in a certain way. But not in the typical way that I don't think in the typical way that I do reviews, because, there were 3 matches on the show, and there were 2 of them that there's really not much to say. The main event was okay, outside of the idea where I feel like the finish was completely fumbled. I feel like the finish was just completely messed up. Because they went for the ref bump, and the ref was completely out of position, right? I don't know if you noticed this, but the referee was completely out of position where he was supposed to be right there and avoid getting hit. And Santana sort of turned around and waved at him. He was completely out of position. Like, the whole thing was a complete mess. It was a complete mess, at least the finish, to the point that TNA somehow managed to go overtime, and their big final angle that they wanted to, or that they had to put on TV to hype Genesis, their big main event angle, wasn't even showed. They did it dark and then threw it up on social media, which is hilariously preposterous. How, someone has to explain to me how with 3 fucking wrestling matches on a 2-hour show, you manage to go overtime and are then unable to put on television on your debut, the big angle, which is supposed to carry you in your go-home show for your big Genesis pay-per-view that's happening over the weekend. That, folks, is what we technically call incompetence. There is no way there's no other way to put it. And I would say overall, creatively speaking, this show was an utter display of incompetence. And I'm not just talking about the visa issues, which should have been worked out by now. If you've got 2 of your top performers that you want for the show, you sort of handle this, way down the line. You sort of handle this months ago, right? Because this show's coming up. This show's coming up and it's been in the can for a long, long time. You get The Office on it and you make sure that your Knockouts World Champion and your X Division Champion, 2 people who you could probably count on to have a decent to good match on this on the show, which was desperately needed. You could at least try to make it so that all of their paperwork is in order so that they can be on the show. Now, I know in the case of Leon Slater, there's I've heard both sides, right? When I say both sides, I've heard the side of the visa issues being one thing, but I've also heard the side of WWE coming in and swooping him up and saying, no, he can't be on your debut show. He's going to come, work for us while we're in the UK. Now, whatever side that you decide to believe at this point, because I don't think we have a definite answer. I don't think so. But both sides are preposterous. Both sides are absolutely preposterous. Like I said, if Leon Slater couldn't perform because his visa stuff wasn't in order, then that is an administrative failure. That means that this company is incompetent at its very core. If he can be there, if his working visa issues aren't settled, that's just flat out incompetence. That should be a top priority. Now, on the other hand, if you believe the WWE scooping him up thing, that's also extremely preposterous and shows the type of relationship, exactly the type of relationship that WWE and TNA have. And we have to stop listening to people say that it's a good relationship, that it's a back and forth, and that everyone is respected. Because if your partner did indeed respect you in this circumstance where you are debuting on a major cable network, you're having your first show there, and if they respected you, they would leave you do whatever you want. They would not swoop in and say, hey, this one talent that you're using here, we're going to use him instead. What kind of relationship is that? How does that even work? Isn't he contracted to TNA? Unless there's something we don't quite understand, unless there's a little something here that we don't quite get. And as how TNA contracts work moving forward, that WWE can claim them at any given moment. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. I don't know. But if that is not the case, how the fuck does Carlos Silva give the okay to this? How is he not calling, Nick Khan or Triple H or whoever the fuck and throwing a fit and saying, motherfuckers, this guy is going to be featured on my first show for my promotion. So no, he's not going to wrestle for you guys. He's staying with me. But no, he just goes and, Carlos Silva is there, in the audience and looking like a wannabe FBI agent, with his little jacket and his hat, and coming in to put the titles on the champions and just smiling. Meanwhile, WWE is just coming in, scooping up his talent and heading off to the UK with it. Like it's literally the cuck situation. And he sits back and he smiles. So I have put on titles here and he. That is not an equitable relationship. That is not something that works both ways. This is something, as we all suspected regardless, if this is indeed the case and is what happened, this is a relationship that benefits principally WWE. And their main thing is they are going to swoop in and grab whatever top talent is breaking into stardom in TNA and is going to make them their own. That's how it's going to go. They've done it with Jordan Grace. They've done it with Joe Hendry. They're going to do it with Mike Santana. They've already started, and they're going to do it with Leon Slater. All guys and gals that TNA is actually building, that is actually promoting as a star. WWE is going to come in and claim them for their own. There's nothing okay about this. Like that's not okay. That's not okay. And then all you can hear afterwards is like, well, I guess TNA is developmental for WWE. I mean, yes, that's what we've been saying. That's what I've been saying for a long time now. And we have proof here. And I mean, I don't know why anyone would be watching another developmental brand for WWE. I don't know why anyone is pretending that this is anything else than just, another cog in the talent pipeline for WWE. We all figured this is what it was going to be, but it's becoming more and more transparent. It's becoming clearer. And remember this, right? Keep one thing in mind. We've had so many people say, oh, well, WWE are going to help. They're going to help TNA promote their show on AMC. They are going to drive eyeballs there. Look, they're lending AJ Styles to TNA, which, by the way, probably happened when they pulled Leon Slater out and WWE went, oh, well, here, look, as a token of appreciation, please accept these flowers. We're sorry, honey. Here you go. We'll give you your own little thing here. I got sidetracked. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the amount of effort that WWE put in to promote this, it was essentially zilch. It was nothing. Again, how is this beneficial to TNA? How is this relationship beneficial for total nonstop action? WWE only sends NXT people their way, and they never say a goddamn word about it. They never promote it. They never share it on socials. They don't go around saying, our own AJ Styles is going to be back home and in TNA for one night, and whatever. It doesn't say a god. They don't promote anything because they don't care, because they've got their own shit to promote, because they don't care about TNA. This is just how it's going. Right? And the more I think about it, the more I put brain power into this, the more I think that this resilient wrestling promotion that has never given up, that people have discarded historically, historically have said TNA is done, Impact is, how many times has this company been on the verge only to be resuscitated, whether it be by Panda Energy, by Billy Corgan, by Anthem Entertainment, and now WWE, and I'm sure I'm forgetting others, but these are just broad strokes here. How many times has this company been on the cusp and somehow always pulls out, always ends up being able to pull out and pull itself out and stay alive? I think this is the end. I think this is it. I think we're going to be hitting a wall here, because there is no way WWE is in a partnership like this with another promotion without having signed documentation, a contract, an agreement, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is. There is no way that they have done this without including their classic clause that says that WWE can buy up these assets anytime they want. that they can buy up TNA at a discount essentially and grab all the assets that they want. And it's just a question of time. It's just a question of time before it happens. I think finally TNA Wrestling is finally driving slowly, but still driving towards the wall. It's going to hit the wall. There's no way this relationship is some great beneficial partnership for both sides. It just doesn't. It just isn't. And the AMC partnership with TNA, well, we don't even know how that looks like. I mean, I think everyone is pretty convinced now. Having watched this show, I think everyone is pretty convinced that this is an ad revenue split, right? Where essentially the broadcaster and the content producer basically split the ad revenue that is generated, I should say, out of ad sales, right? So that could also explain for the numerous amount of commercials that happened during this television show. That could also account for it. But aside from that, essentially what that means is that you're not getting any money up front. AMC is not paying TNA an amount up front like, WWE does, like AEW does, right? And I want to reiterate, there's nothing wrong with an ad split. I don't have an issue with an ad split because that's essentially a way for the network to say, okay, let's see how you perform before we commit to anything. Let's see how this goes before we outright start giving you anything, right? AEW started like that on the Turner networks. That's how it began, with an ad split, but that deal was quickly torn up, and Warner Bros. Sat back down with them and said, "Hey, listen, we're gonna negotiate something else because I think we've got something here." So that might happen with TNA, not if they continue doing shit like this, but it is in the realm of possibility. Although I wouldn't bank on it, I wouldn't bet any farms on this. And I'm talking about the ad split I said, oh, everyone probably has realized that it's an ad split by now, because everything that TNA, they didn't show off. Let me say this again. They didn't show off anything from their production point of view that would make you think that this is there's this new injection of money and that the company can then do all of these great things. Now suddenly there's all the production is elevated and everything looks great. No, it didn't look great. It looked very low rent. It looked very Bush League, quite frankly. The audio was terrible. The hard cam white balance wasn't in tune with the rest of the cameras at ringside. The directions, the shot, there's nothing here that gave you the impression that this company was just like flush with money and was making these big upgrades to come across as big time on its big night. But no, it had to stay exactly how it is. People who watch TNA on a regular basis told me, no, this is essentially the same thing that we've been seeing every week, which is preposterous. This is your biggest night. This is the only night you have to make a great first impression for a potential new audience. And what we get essentially is something resembling a parody of a wrestling show. Like if you were to get a bunch of comedians, who are specialists in awkward humor to do a wrestling show parody, this is kind of what they do, only it'd be funnier. It wouldn't try to take itself seriously here. This was a bad show. It was a bad show from top to bottom. And, on the stream after we were done, we headed on over to Eric Bischoff's live stream. We headed on because he had announced that he was doing a post show live reactions with JBL after. All right. And then I realized this was all under the Conrad verse. So, more commercials, essentially, more ad reads. Anyway, nonetheless, look, I didn't know what I was expecting, No, I do know what I was expecting. Hang on. Wait a minute. I do know what I was expecting. This is what I was expecting. I was at the very least expecting to hear Eric Bischoff be honest for once in his life and say, yeah, you know what? That wasn't great. And JBL to go, kind of missed the mark. But here's the problem that exists with these two gentlemen. In JBL's case, he is still employed to a degree by WWE/TKO, right? So he's not going to go out and shit on a business partner. He's not going to do that. And Eric Bischoff has such a raging hate boner for AEW that he's not going to turn around and say, well, TNA sort of dropped the ball tonight, particularly since he's been the principal and loudest voice in this. TNA will be the number 2 promotion with this deal. Of course, he's not going to turn around and say, well, I might have fucked up because he's a lying piece of shit and he's an egomaniac and he's not going to be, he is unable to have any form of real self-reflection and say, yeah, you know what? I might be wrong about this, folks. I might have said some things that are completely untrue, because he has to keep his grift alive. And his grift is WWE is great and AEW sucks. And that's what he has to do. So he absolutely has to continue promoting anything that WWE does, whether it's directly or ancillary, as the greatest thing ever, and AEW failing at every corner. Can you imagine? I want you to take a step back and I want you to take a deep breath, clear your mind and think if AEW had put on the show that TNA had put on last Thursday. I want you to think of how these people, JBL and Eric Bischoff and Bubba Ray Dudley and the rest, I want you to think about how they would be rightfully eviscerating the company, as anyone with the brain has been doing in regards to Impact, TNA period, over the past couple of days. They deserve to be eviscerated. All I'm saying is that another company, someone that is not adjacent to WWE and one that fits the grift, Eric Bischoff would be absolutely destroying this company and saying over and over, I was right. I kept telling you, AEW stinks. We have the proof here. They were unable to make a show. No. Instead, I heard things on that stream like, oh, well, they're going to improve. I'm like, brother, this was episode 1121 of TNA Impact. They've been doing this for 1,100 plus episodes. I think it's about time that they improve. I think, scratch that, they've had more than enough time to improve. But it's still the same shit over and over and over again. It is always the same stuff when it comes down to TNA. And then they'll have a bright period, a little spot where suddenly things start to connect and things feel good. You're like, it's interesting again. And then they do this. Then they shit their own bed. Then they trip all over themselves. They shit their own pants. Whatever issues TNA has, they're all self-inflicted. They've got no one to blame but themselves. And this has been going on for decades. There's something like cosmic about it that to a degree feels normal. Like the balance of the universe is okay because TNA is TNAing it up. I don't want to hear anything about, how they're going to get better, they're going to improve. This is not a startup plucky little promotion. They've been around for decades, folks. We got to stop pretending like, this is the young upstart. No, 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 no. This is a company that has it has history. It has decades of history. We got to stop pretending. This sucked. What this means essentially, I've broken down the type of people who will say nice things about this show. Okay? Anyone who has positive things to say about this show, say that it was good. They're either one of four people. They're either working for the company directly, either they have an agenda, literally watch their first pro wrestling match that night and they don't know any better, or they have no standards whatsoever. It's either one of those four things. And what that means to you, a discerning audience, what that means is that you need to cut those people out. You should not pay them any heed. If you are subscribed, if you follow to them, you pull the plug. If you are giving them money to a Patreon or whatever, you cut that line of revenue. Stop wasting money on these people. They are completely out to lunch. There's something going on. As a wrestling fan, you should feel insulted that this happened. You should feel bad. You should feel like I felt when I came in to watch that show with the most open mind possible. I was like, I'm going to give this the fairest chance so that it can work out, so that I can be surprised. I want to be surprised here. And then they go and do this. Like everyone would have benefited. It would have been beneficial if TNA had a good show, but they didn't. They ended up completely making a fool out of themselves and professional wrestling in the meantime. And that's why I say, oftentimes, but when I do reviews, when I do show reviews, when I do the Dynamite review, the weekly Dynamite review here on the channel that you should check out every Thursday, every time I do these reviews, I feel sometimes I go really hard on stuff. I feel like there's some times where I'm like, where I feel I'm particularly harsh, digging at things and pointing things out. And oftentimes it's the same things, because what do you want from me? I have standards. But I think that's okay. I think it's normal. Like I've had people, tell me sometimes, well, I think you're going a little too hard on AEW in your reviews. I think that was a little too hard. This went a little too far, so on and so forth. But I'm like, am I? Because if we let standards slip, this might happen. And I'm not just talking about AEW. I'm talking about everything. Not just pro wrestling. Everything at all. Continue to have standards. Expect the best out of the things you enjoy, the entertainment you consume. Expect things that live up to standards, as opposed to just like shrugging and going, oh, well, this wasn't so bad. No, you can absolutely say this was terrible. That's why when you have referees going online to say, to sort of say, oh, well, you don't know what goes on backstage, this is very difficult. Or when you have, Paul Levesque hitting Twitter saying, or whatever way he communicates these days, saying, I wish people would just be fans, stop being critical and just be fans. This is how you know that your criticisms are working, because these people are affected by it. And there's two paths then that you can take. Once you receive those criticisms, you can ignore them, or you can take the criticism to heart and try to understand how you can improve. Now, a guy like Triple H, he's going to ignore him because he doesn't feel he has to improve on jack shit. But that's a conversation for another time as well. The point being is that there will be instances where you won't feel it's going to work, and the quality is going to slip, and it's going to become shit. And then what happens? Then you know what you do? You just stop listening, watching, consuming, however it is, whether it's a comic book, whether it's a music album. If it doesn't live up to your standards, stop listening to it. You don't owe your time, your money to these people. They should be working hard to make sure you're happy, so that you will drop whatever money you can, or devote whatever time you have to their product. That's how it goes. You should never feel guilty. And you should never be just a fan. It's basically, which again is insulting for fans, because I think fans should be able to have standards. Everyone should have standards. Don't join in these call to actions where it's like, oh, well, you don't know what goes on backstage. Listen, brother, every company has issues that you don't see. There are always problems in any company which they strive to overcome to create a quality product. Do you think that when Apple released the first few iPhones, that it wasn't a complete and utter upheaval in the company, and that there weren't rivalries and feuds and misunderstandings and anger? And do you think it was just like everyone sitting around going kumbaya and just high-fiving each other because they made a great product? Jesus fucking Christ. And nonetheless, despite all the problems that they had, they put out the fucking iPhone, which was revolutionary. So I don't give it, and it's the same thing with AEW. It's the same thing if we bring this back to wrestling. It's the same thing with AEW. It's the same thing with WWE. It's the same thing with New Japan Pro Wrestling. It's a question of overcoming your fucking problems. When you run into problems, how do you overcome them? How do you fix them, overcome them, work around them to continue to produce a quality product for your audience? Because you can't say on one side of your mouth, say, well, just be fans and enjoy the show. And then on the other side say, oh, well, you can't enjoy the show because you can't criticize the show because you don't understand everything that's going on backstage. Like, you can't have it both ways. You can't expect us to just be fans if you also expect us to understand that it's really complicated backstage. You can't have it both ways. That's insane. That's insane. But this show proved to me that having standards and being vocal about them and being fair, which is also very important, being fair on how you feel about things are going is crucial. It's essential. Pro wrestling needs more critics, less influencers. This is what we need. We need more people that are able to parse judgment and be fair in their observations and criticisms in pro wrestling to keep things on a high level standard. Because why would you expect anything else? Why would you allow yourself to be submitted to slop? Why would you be okay with watching slop? Your time is valuable. You are an intelligent human being. I don't care what your mother says. You're a smart person. So you should be able to expect a professional wrestling promotion to give you something that will hit your standards, will make you feel good, and that you won't have the impression that you always have to compromise because you're just a fan. Makes no sense. Let's talk about this fucking show. AJ Styles opened it up with a rah-rah speech. I don't know why people keep thinking AJ Styles is going to wrestle in TNA. It's not going to happen. This is a guy who cannot wait to retire. He's been talking about his retirement for the past 18 months. And now this is going to be his retirement year. But this is a guy who's excited to retire, to never have to wrestle again. And it's fine. He's done everything he possibly needs to do. He's been a champion pretty much everywhere. He's made gobs of money. He knows he's not going to hang around the top of the card with Cody and Roman and CM Punk, and he knows his time. He understands all of this. I don't know why he'd do this. Anyway, he does the rah-rah speech, kind of like what he did, what was it, a couple of months ago on another episode of TNA, where everyone thought, oh, AJ Styles is going to show up, he's going to do something. He didn't do shit. After that, during the show, he sort of chest bumped with Santana. I don't know what, and he ran into Kazarian and he sort of stared at the title, and people think, oh, he's going to challenge. He's not challenging for shit. AJ Styles is not going to go wrestle in TNA. Just like, the Chris Jericho stuff. It's insane to me that people thought that Chris Jericho would be hopping out of AEW to go do things in TNA, especially when you know deep down in your heart that Paul Levesque wants to hang on to Chris Jericho to debut him at the Royal Rumble. Because the debut is one of 5 booking ideas that Triple H has. So he's going to keep these ideas for himself. He's not going to give TNA Chris Jericho. He's going to take their talent and he's not going to give anything back. I don't know how hard this is. Oh, we'll let Sol Ruka and Delta show up, whatever Zarya, right, is what they call her. We're going to let them, who cares? We're going to send them all the NXT talent. It's so important for WWE to establish that TNA is on the level of WWE's developmental and that they don't hang with the big guys. They don't hang with the big leagues over on main roster. We'll send AJ Styles down there and he'll give a rah-rah speech because he has deep connective history with TNA, but he's not going to wrestle there because it's beneath him. I'm not saying that's what AJ Styles says. That's the perception that WWE is giving off. Anyway, the one thing that AJ Styles did here was get this crowd really fucking fired up. They were really fucking fired up for Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy, and Elijah defeating Mustafa Ali and his pals. Look, you know why they started with this match? Because it's the Hardy Boys, and and people were hot. They were into it. They were so excited. And you can go check on stream. The match was fine or whatever. It's like it was a nice little party match. It got people into it, and you can go check on stream. I said, I hope that they're able to maintain the level of energy from the crowd for all 3 matches during this show, because you got a 2-hour show with 3 matches on it. I hope I really was hoping that they were able to pull off some kind of big trick here, but we all know how that turned out. Now, we get the Frankie Kazarian bit there. Then we have Gia Miller, God bless her, who's interviewing the Hollywood intelligentsia who was there from the AMC show Dark Star. What was it called? Shit. As you can tell, I don't have many notes. I just have general things. What was it? Dark Star? Dark Nights? Dark Winds? Dark Winds. It was Dark Winds. With Dark Winds. That no one knows who it was. And here's the kicker. Here is the punch in the gut. No chyrons to tell us who the fuck these people were. No nameplates, nothing. It was fucking bizarre. And she's talking to these people, and I don't remember if this all happened in the same segment, but she's talking to these people, and then they show off all the other luminaries that are there. They've got a couple of more TNA wrestlers that I don't know who they are. They've got Candice Michelle, who has never wrestled a minute in TNA Impact, who is there. And she does her little twirly thing, and it's like, oh my God, it's the GoDaddy girl. And now this is there's a generation of people who do not know anything about Candice Michelle being the GoDaddy girl. There's an entire generation of people who have no idea what I just talked about. But she's there for some reason, and I'm like, okay, this is out of left field. But here comes my favorite part of the show. My favorite part of the show was all of this stuff. Because after they show off these people here, they cut to another side of the arena where you have a WBC boxer, right? World Heavyweight Championship boxer that no one has ever heard of, right? Who's sitting there with this championship belt. And then the camera sort of pans, and you've got a line of wrestling influencers, all people. I recognized one person in there. Alex Lejas was there. Otherwise, a whole row of people. And I had no idea who any of these people are. And the camera just pans them, and then you have Fuckface Phillips who's like, and you have all these influencers like so-and-so and so-and-so. And I'm like, I don't know who these people are. I have no idea who these people are, and it's okay. It's fine. It's not something I consume. So it's just like, I don't mind that they're panning the camera across these people really quickly. The funny part, the fucking hilarious part of this is that these people were all set up on the side of the arena where all the seats were empty. And the camera was just hanging there, looking at the boxer, looking at the influencers going across, and you could see swaths of chairs, of seats, empty as it could be. And I'm sitting there going, I do not understand why they're doing this. Why are they doing this? What I was saying earlier, TNA tripping over themselves. This is exactly what I'm talking about. They cut to AJ Francis with another dude, right? A guy on the roster that you probably could have booked. He was there. You could have had him do a match, but no, he's just standing there waving, and there are swaths of empty seats behind him. And I'm like, no, 2 shots in a row, 2 completely different shots, different angles, different cameras, different spots in the arena. This is where they do it. And then you have, Eric Young, who's like in the fucking, all the way in the back. It's so bad. This was my favorite part of the show because it is absolutely some LOL TNA business. It was so funny that they just got in their way once again on this hilarious stuff. Anyway, and then they go back to the AMC guys, right? And they're talking it up and whatnot. And then Ryan Nemeth shows up, and he's upset that they're talking to the fucking AMC guys because he's like, oh, you're having a Hollywood get together and you're not inviting the Hollywood hunk. And this leads to a shoving exchange between Nemeth and one of these guys from the show. And he shoves Nemeth down to the mat, to the floor, right? Not to the mat, that we're all doing this ringside. He falls to the floor, and he's just like, he's giving like this goofy cartoonish face, like, where it's like you half expect, the birds to start twirling around his head, rotating like a mobile, with the birds and stars. It's just incredibly cringe. And then at this point, I'm like, this fucking sucks, dude. All of this sucks. And then you bring out Santina Marella, and boy, oh boy, did we get a handful of Santina Marella. Let me tell you something. They were talking about him. He was on this segment. His daughter was talking about it in another segment, and then he was involved in the main event segment. Can't get enough of Santina Marella, guys. This is how TNA is going to win the wars, and they're going to become the biggest revenue driver for AMC. More Santina Marella. It's preposterous. In the meantime, look, you've got AEW signing, Jake something, the Rascals, Zeta Steel. In WWE, they're doing their tryouts, right? They've hired Aigle Blanc from France. They're giving Starboy Charlie a tryout, right? And AEW's picking up Alec Price and Jordan Oliver, all of these new fresh faces. But TNA says, we're counterculture. We're going to push Santina Marella down your throats because the people want the Santina Marella. And I haven't seen Santina Marella in such a long time. I don't understand. I don't understand what his tone is supposed to be. I don't understand what he's supposed to be. Do I take him seriously? Do I take him not seriously? Because his gimmick is always like goofy, but he was in a very serious situation here, and he still sounded like an absolute goofball. I don't know what the thing is. Anyway, this serious situation was in. Of course, you've all heard now. The FKA Sonya Deville showed up. Daria Ray, calls herself the suit. Shut up, I'm talking. Yuck. Anyway, she's showing up to do something completely revolutionary as well. She's going to be an authority figure, and there's going to be a battle of authority figures in TNA, folks. Just exciting, compelling stuff. We're 2008 Raw. I got the shivers, man. Just excellent stuff. Then we finally get Perez Hilton. He's with the Elegance people, right? You've got Dana Brooke, right? You got Dana Brooke, who's retired and who's talking about trimming the fat from TNA, and yet she's still around. And then you have the two others. I don't know who they are. It doesn't matter. And they're there to reveal Mr. Elegance, that they're hiding this person under like a throw, like a like a furry throw, and he's hiding under there. And they're there. We're going to reveal the newest member of the Elegance brand, and Perez Hilton is here. The much touted appearance of Perez Hilton. He was there. He just stood around. He just said one line, which made me laugh. Don't get me wrong. I thought his delivery was spot on. He was funny. But look, at the same time, I'm desperate for any kind of entertainment at this point. So I'm like, who's the reveal? Who are they pulling out here? Who is the guy that they're supposed to bring out from that's under this blanket? They're making a big deal out of it. Well, it turns out we don't know. No one knows who this guy is. Mr. Elegance is what he's calling himself. And he cuts a really long promo. No one knows who he is. The audience is completely stun-locked. I'm stun-locked. We don't know what's going on. People are saying, oh, it's Tyler Rust. And I'm like, I guess, maybe. But Tyler Rust is like, he's kind of up there. The idea was that they took a tubby production worker from TNA, and they gave him plastic surgery and whatnot, and now he's this guy. It's so bad, but it got worse because it led to the Knockouts Tag Team Championship, where the Elegance brand defeated the Inspiration in an awful match, just a dirt poor shit match. I can't believe that this type of match was allowed to be on television. I'm sorry to say. And I know, look, maybe they had plans for Dani Luna, but women's wrestling has come such a long way for it to fall back flat on its face when TNA basically tells people, hey, we're putting our best foot forward here. We're showing you the best that we have on our first night on AMC. And you give us this. This was awful. Now it turns out that the Iconics are done with TNA. That was their last match. Their contracts were, or whatever, they were done after this match. As long as they don't show up on anything that I watch regularly, I have no issues with that. No issues in the least. And then we have Ariana Grace here, and she's with the Stacks dude. The NXT people, right, essentially are there, and they're talking about Santina Marella because, it's like Poochie. Indy Hartwell then, she's there, and she cuts a promo, and you're like, oh yeah, Indy Hartwell is here. I am continuing to not watch this promotion, and she gets insulted by the Elegance people. I don't know. I don't care. I don't care about this. Like, I am not watching this moving forward. They're setting up this, but I couldn't care less. So this is then followed up by an angle, because yes, now we're getting nothing but angles. We're getting nothing but talk. There was so much promos and stuff, and so this is where they announced that Dani Luna is not going to be at Genesis because of the visa issues. I'll tell you what, Dani Luna she dodged a fucking bullet. She dodged a bullet not being on this show. Very excited for her to cut ties with these people and find any kind of other work. Very excited for her. This is someone who does not deserve to be associated with this fucking roster. Anyway, Lei Ying Lee, who is the Knockouts champion, basically comes out and she says, she's with Zaya Brookside for some reason. I don't know. Again, I don't care. And she says, look, I'll open challenge. I'll take on all comers. And that's when they bring in the NXT people, Delta and Zaria and Sol Ruka. who are hilarious as a tag team that don't get along, I guess. The odd couple, right? That's the gimmick. It's not that they don't get along. They're just an odd couple. Then Santino Marella, he's back. He's back. I tell you, we can't get enough of Santino Marella. And he tells Cedric Alexander that Leon Slater has visa issues, so the X Division champion won't be able to wrestle at Genesis. So instead, Santino says that he'll get a title later, but for Genesis, he's going to give him a match against Moose and Joe Hendry. They do a bit where, I don't want to say his name because he's going to appear. Why like at this point I'm like, why would you do you hate Joe Hendry? Is that the thing? Like, why not? Anyway, he says his name, but he doesn't appear. He gets a call from Joe Hendry on his phone, and it's all extremely cringe. And talking about cringe, the System cut a promo putting over Eddie Edwards and JDC's match at Genesis. And it was incredibly underprepared. The guys didn't know what to say. It was like, brother, I'm going to tell you something. Brother, you're my brother. And, I'm not going to go soft on you, brother. Brother, I hope you don't, brother, go soft on me. Let me tell you, brother. I'm like, oh, Jesus, you're like a brother to me, brother. I just wanted, it was incredibly bad. It was incredibly bad. Then, because we're not done, Carlos Silva shows up to welcome Dixie Carter to the stage. Now, I don't know what the issue was, but she got booed out of the building. Now, whatever you feel about in regards to Dixie Carter, booing her out of the building. If you're a TNA fan and you were there and you were booing Dixie Carter out of the building, this woman who kept this fucking promotion afloat. If this promotion is putting on this shitty show in 2026, it's because of her. Maybe that is a reason to boo for her. But if you're a fan of TNA, you should not be booing her because she kept this fucking place afloat when no one else wanted it. She swooped in and saved it, is what she did. It's preposterous to me that she'd get booed. Funny, but still preposterous. Anyway. Bully Ray comes out and then hugs her because remember their feud. Remember their big deep feud. Anyway, Bubba Ray Dudley shows up to call the main event with Matt Raywalt and Fuckface Phillips, and he essentially mails it in. And there's a couple of times I don't remember exactly. I talked about it on stream, but I don't remember. But there's a couple of occasions where you can tell Bully hasn't been watching the product, where he clearly doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know the name of Mike Santana's moves. Like, what are you doing here, pal? Isn't this the number 2 promotion? Shut the fuck up. Just go home, do what you got to do, right? Anyway. And then you get the main event, which is all right, but sort of goes off rails at the end. And I'm not necessarily talking about the ref bump that I was the ref that was out of place for the ref bump. Not necessarily that. I'm just the overall match itself. And hey, it took 3 spinning lariat finishers from Mike Santana to put Frankie Kazarian away. Not 3 in a row, but it took 3 of his principal finishers to put down Frankie Kazarian. Let that sink into your brains for a second. When the main event came around at this point, I was so unplugged from this. I was so upset. I was, I couldn't believe what was going on. Completely detached, frustrated, disappointed, angry. It would have taken a Misawa Kabashi level match here to get me back into it. I was completely glazed over. I was like, what the fuck did I just watch? It would have taken a Herculean effort to get me back into this. I watched the match. It was fine or whatever, but Jesus Christ, this fucking show, a complete and utter disaster. What have we learned, children? What have we learned? Never let up on your standards. Watch things that have the same standards as you do. Do not let trite like this become the norm. Call it out, criticize, be honest about it, be fair. I think I was extremely fair here. This was bad, unentertaining slop. Those are my thoughts.